we need to be very careful that we don't create sort of an angry mob outside the cities that will hunt us with the pitchforks.
Welcome to the Swisspreneur Show, a podcast about startup stories and learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Sylvan.
Malik, very well welcome to the Swisspreneur Show. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
We're recording this podcast from our very new and own studio, so you're our very first guest, and it's an honor to have you here. You are actually a partner at Dezentrum, a think tank about positive scenarios for a digital society of tomorrow. And in parallel, you also run Flatastic, a household managing app, which I'm an avid user myself. I love it and basically use it almost every day. So before we start to talk about, Berlin versus Zurich, failures, and your other ventures that you actually worked on, we want to focus on your personal background. You studied interdisciplinary natural sciences at ETH, and then you actually went to work in labs for Big Pharma before realizing that it was the wrong fit for you. So I just want to know, why was it the wrong fit for you? What didn't appeal you? What wasn't attractive for you in the Big Pharma world?
Yeah, thank you very much, Sylvan, for this nice intro and for the first question. Maybe before addressing it, I want to say I'm super honored and humbled to be here, actually listening to the podcast for quite a while and admiring your guests. And now I'm one of these guests, which is sort of a little bit crazy for me. Exactly. So my studies, I actually just followed my interest when choosing what to study. And the reason why I picked interdisciplinary sciences was that I wanted to understand the world, right? This is why my main motivation. And I loved the studies. The theory was amazing. We had physics with the physicists, chemistry with the chemists, and biology with the biologists. And then we were able to pick our own curriculum. And we had a nice little group of people pushing each other. So we were already in, let's say, in the second year, taking master courses and pushing ourselves to sort of see what is possible. And then came the times where I started to work in the lab, and I'm a little bit clumsy. So, you're now working on a microliter and milligram scale, and then you're like, oops, and the flask sort of falls down on the floor. And so at the end, I felt that working in the lab compared to all the theory, that wasn't that appealing. Already during my bachelor thesis, which I did in microbiology, basically building a system for directed evolution, so working with E. coli bacteria. And during that time, I thought, okay, now this obviously doesn't make me happy. What should I do? So instead of just continuing with my master, I took a break and started to look for internships. The first one I found in Vienna. So I combined a little bit this internship thing with traveling with Baxter. That's a big pharmaceutical lab. And my role, obviously not being finished with my studies, was not that interesting at that time. So I was in the quality assurance lab, which is the most boring lab that you can imagine, because now you just do things like a procedure every day the same, and then you have to learn like a little a new procedure, and then you're able to do two of them. So that was the first sort of peek into industry, which then I thought, okay, no way in hell I want to go into this direction. The second one was I was super lucky to be part of informatics team at Crucell, which is based in Bern. Working as a working student there. So now I was still in the pharma industry or biotech industry, but more on the information technology side of things. And I would say like the work was nice. The surrounding, okay-ish. And I thought, okay, let's do one more sort of exploration of how my career future could look like. I was lucky to get this internship in Melbourne at CSIRO, which is sort of a research facility. Now, instead of doing microbiology, I was doing organic chemistry, which was basically, let's say, my idea was to sort of combine these two fields and work at this intersection in the future. And yeah, Melbourne is fantastic, super nice city. You can go surfing, and the crowd is super nice. But work was, again, okay, that wasn't for me. I wasn't enthusiastic about it.
Got it. And then basically after, experiencing the Australian lifestyle in 2012, you then decided to join Fit Analytics, which is not like the big pharma industry that you were part of before. Fit Analytics basically solved the sizing challenges for top apparel companies. And you suddenly realized that, hey, this is actually the stuff that is a lot of fun, that is a good fit for you. So what was so much more captivating about Fit Analytics than the big pharma world before?
Yeah, very good question. So, okay, after Melbourne, I went on and traveled a little bit and came back then again to Switzerland, and I didn't have a clue what to do. Like, I mean, okay, I knew that this is basically sciences, follow this wasn't the right path, and I was clueless. So I went back to Crucell. They were still happy to having me there, and at the same time, my girlfriend, she had an internship in Berlin. So I thought, okay, if you don't know what to do, you go to Berlin. And yeah, I wrote at least 100 applications to different companies and for different roles as well, because I just didn't know what I want. Fit Analytics interviewed me. It was super fun, the interview already. And so what was super captive about my work there is that I was still running experiments together with Jaron, who was sort of my boss at that time. He had a PhD in statistics. And we were looking, like, the goal of Fit Analytics is to sort of give you a size recommendation when you're shopping on Zalando. So do I need an S, an M, an L? And the issue with that is there's no perfect size. So for a person, something might be tight, and whereas for another person, this is loose, right? So you need to find to then translate this feeling into something analytical. And we were running statistical models, had garments measured, had people over, and they had then to try different sort of garments. We had a huge database of measurements of people, and yeah, we were running experiments instead of E. coli bacteria or white powders that I used in the organic chemistry lab. It was with data and with people and with products, and I was super fascinated about that process. So that was like one thing that I really loved about working at Fit Analytics, and the other one was that we were a super small, dedicated team. Yeah, most of you will know that, like, in a startup, nothing is really, let's say, you would say it's not that professional yet, but everybody is sort of dedicating to it and making stuff better and generating a good atmosphere in the team. So we had lunches together, for instance, and the team is super close there. And what I loved is to have a lot of responsibility as well. So after 3 months, my boss left, and then I was sort of running all the experiments in there. That's I think this is what made the difference to the work that I had in the lab before.
So you basically started working in the startup world, but then while living in Berlin, something else also happened. And I think it was with your roommate from your shared apartment, where you not only had your first experience as a startupper, but basically also realized, hey, there's much more to that. So I could eventually also launch my own company. Can you talk a bit more about what happened in that, shared apartment, what the spirit looked like and what actually came out of it?
Yeah, super gladly. So, yeah, at the time, working at the startup, having a nice life, it was super, it was great. And I thought, okay, hey, the direction is right. And, I think most people have this thought to, like, create a company at some point. but you don't take it really seriously, right? And now you're part of this small team, and you start thinking, okay, what the team did so far, you might be able to do that. Nevertheless, I was still postponing sort of the decision of what to actually do in my career, and to start a startup was something, I could do that further down the road at some point. And in my shared flat, there was a group of friends that sort of half a year earlier decided to leave their jobs and to found a startup and to go down this path. And I was super close to this evolution, more or less, their personal one. And at the same time, they were looking at how I was sort of working in this startup and thinking about the future. And we had this one night where we were sitting on the balcony, as you said correctly, and me like sort of giving excuses why I don't start something right now. And my roommates back then arguing that it doesn't make any sense. Like my arguments just don't make any sense. If I want to start, I could start right now or even yesterday. So that was like the turning point where I realized, okay, becoming an entrepreneur is sort of a decision and not something that happens to you along the way. And if you don't take this decision, you just never will go down that path.
Makes sense. And what actually gave you the confidence to take that decision? Was it, the people around you? So basically your surrounding that said, hey, we can do it. And then you took the message and say, hey, if they can do it, I can actually do it too. Or what was really the driver behind that decision?
Stupidity. So it was blank stupid at that point to start an own venture because, as you heard, my background is in sciences. I didn't have a clue about economics, about how to run a company, about accounting, nor did I have the connections sort of needed to get you started. I mean, I was maybe 6 months in Berlin at that time. Okay, I had nice friends starting their startup, but that starting your own company, that's like, that absorbs you. So they were pushing me, but they were completely absorbed. So after taking the decision, actually, because I was at that time also discussing with Fit Analytics to sort of negotiate a contract to stay longer in the company. And as said, stupidity drove me to sort of say, no, I'm going to create my own company. And the first attempt, it just failed immediately.
What did you do there? Like, what was the first attempt at entrepreneurship for you?
So I can either pitch it in a way where you might take it seriously, or you can pitch it in a laughable way. So let's go with the second one. It was a circus, more or less. And the idea behind it is a little bit close to the startup you started. Like, I saw that these clubs structure wasn't working so much for our generation. Like the club where you go every Tuesday or every Thursday, that wasn't with the spontaneous gatherings and new sports that you try out. So I tried to find something in that niche, and we thought about also new sports or emerging sports that personally I was just testing out. So slacklining, for instance, and try to build a community around that and the platform that you can spontaneously join one of these activities in your neighborhood. So that's why, like, the circus kind of thing. So our first events were actually circus-like because we had slacklines and juggling balls and all that. And we're trying to attract people to join us and to sort of join our little community. I still have a flyer from back then. Didn't bring it to you.
How did you name that circus? What was the name of the project?
Unicirc. It was a universal circus.
Nice. And then how long were you actually working on it before you then gave up on that idea?
Hey, that was months, 2 months. And I just realized, okay, I'm lost. I'm alone. The first few events, they were nice, but I didn't have a clue, okay, in which direction to go and how to do this. Like, okay, the first thing is, okay, it's a decision to become an entrepreneur. And the second one is to start knowing what to do. And I just didn't have a clue. So after this 2 months, I thought, okay, I need to go back to school. And this is what I did. So I relocated from Berlin to Zurich. I started my master's, and I knew, okay, I need certain skills to fit what I intended to do. And one of them was computer sciences, because with Fit Analytics, with also my work at Crucial, I thought, okay, I want to learn more about this field. And the second part was all the venture courses, or a crash course in startup. And yeah, lucky enough, we have very good programs here in Switzerland with Venture Lab at that time, which, if I'm not mistaken, is still active.
Absolutely. And at the same time, after you got back for your master studies, you were actually also president of the ETH Entrepreneur Club for a period of time. So what role, or in what way, has this actually helped you to then later become a better entrepreneur than at your first attempt?
So it was super important, this experience. And I'm very grateful to sort of have had the chance to take over this, to get into this role. Basically I was stoked. I came back and I was full of energy, and I met the guys that were part of the Entrepreneur Club at a few events, and it went pretty fast that the former president Kaspar at some point asked me, if I want to join, and I was like, yeah, for sure. And then the second question was, you want to become president? And I was like, let me think about it. And I thought about it, and I thought, okay, let's go, right? It was quite difficult at that time because the whole committee changed. So it is one of the issues with these students' clubs, is that every semester certain knowledge just gets lost, right? And in our case at that time, like, there was basically no knowledge transfer. I was lucky enough that a few from former committee members were still close and helped us along the way. That was one of the first experiences leading a team where I probably did a lot of mistakes and probably did a few things quite okay. So that was nice. And it was also nice to have this community of like-minded people around you, sort of pushing you on your journey. Because as you can imagine, it's not the standard sort of way to go. And I already had a few discussions with my family that thought, okay, they're not understanding what I'm doing at the moment, you know.
Were they happy to see that you went back to university for the master's degree? Because I know that from my own parents, sometimes they say, please go back to university, finish your master's degree, then you can get a good job. Because there's just this lack of perception of working in a startup is actually also a good and active career path that you can choose.
Oh yeah, definitely.
How do you handle that? I can imagine that this could also put some pressure on you to fulfill the expectations of your home, of your parents.
I mean, I'm super grateful for the education that I got from my parents, and also from my family. And I mean, they were right, because I also at some point decided not to continue my master's studies, but just follow my projects. And they were right in some certain extent that probably my path would have had been way easier staying within this strong institution, finishing my degree, and getting people from this institution involved into my journey. I didn't see it at that time, and I still would do it the same way because, I mean, there's no right or wrong, so to say. There's just different paths. So they were definitely right in telling me to finish my studies and to get the good job, obviously. And yes, it puts some pressure on you, but I believe that's part of of life.
Right. I mean, that also shapes and develops you in a certain way, and I think helps you to find out what you really want to go after. And you knew what you wanted to go after because in 2014, you co-founded Yeppt. which promised to be a mix of Facebook events, WhatsApp, and Doodle. And you also moved back to Berlin. So basically from Zurich to Berlin, back to Zurich, and now back to Berlin. Why was it the right time to go back to Berlin again?
So, yeah, you see, I'm going back and forward. Yeah, with the team that we started Yeppt, we were addressing this problem at that time that nobody sort of could make up his mind when it came to activities. I don't know, this generation of, or this zeitgeist of Facebook maybes. You wanted to start something and everybody was sort of waiting until the last second to sort of, either say, hey, I'm probably joining or not. We thought of Yeppt as a super fun prototype, exactly in this niche as you described it. At that time, Snapchat was quite hyped, and we were really thinking about messaging and how you could improve messaging. And this is how Yeppt sort of was born. And in a hackathon, we received like the first place, and then we thought, okay, let's apply to different accelerators. And then mid-March, Axel Springer Plug and Play in Berlin said, hey, yeah, you're in. And my co-founders, they both already lived in Berlin. This is also why we applied to this and numerous other accelerators. So for them, that was a no-brainer. And for me, actually, it was also a no-brainer. I was like, okay, let's go. Quit my job. I had a job at the ETH here, and started this adventure again because I was super stoked of now sort of having more knowledge of how addressing a startup, what matters, and was super confident because also the feedback we received was fantastic.
One thing that is very interesting for me is your first idea, the circus idea, basically didn't work out. You then went back to university, and then you still decided, okay, now I go on and work on my next project. I want to try it again. What kept you going? Because for some people, it's just, hey, I tried it, didn't work out. Now I do something else and eventually end up at the big corporate again. So what kept you going to still continue the entrepreneurial path?
I'm asking myself the same question. I don't know. Honestly, I think you have to decide over and over again in your life what you want. And in my special case, I think I had to decide and redecide to go down this entrepreneurial part, even though I would say success or the let's say what we understand as success was not there from moment one. But I don't know, for me, it's just that's the way. And at the end, it just was a natural shift of my attention. So when the semester sort of was finished, instead of learning for the exams and preparing for the exams, I was just working on this project and discussing with my co-founders and building business plans and prototypes. And so it was just naturally this, and I just followed, this instinct more or less, and kept going in there.
Awesome. But then Yeppt didn't take off despite the really great start. What went wrong from your perspective, and what did you learn from that startup, from that project, basically?
So a lot of things. First, I said we received great feedback, and that was the I would say one of the bigger mistakes that we did. I mean, you get great feedback if you ask the wrong questions, and unfortunately, there's this fantastic book that I recommend to everybody to read, because it's also, I think it's 60 or 90 pages. It's a page turner as well. It's the mom test. So how to ask question that even your mom, that always supports you, will just straight tell you the truth about your idea. So we didn't do that, and we received fantastic feedback, and we thought, hey, we're on the right way. Secondly, these accelerators, they're great. One needs to understand what you get out of them and what you shouldn't get out of them. So at one point, I mean, you're working on we were working on our product. We're a super product driven company as well, and trying to make it work, and received tons of feedback from very knowledgeable people that if you would want to listen to all of them, you were just paralyzed, and being a bit unerfahren, how you say that, with not that much experience, we were just overthinking certain things. Maybe the third thing that I learned is that fundraising is super important, especially if you're a part of an accelerator, because this is what an accelerator gives you. He gives you social proof and he gives you a stage, and you need to do fundraising. And as product team, we were convinced, hey, we're building a messenger. If you get that right, you get viral growth. And if you get viral growth, fundraising isn't an issue. And we received also feedback into this direction. The issue is, if you run out of money, you can't do any experiments anymore. And also, if there's this always hanging, let's say, pressure over you that you have like only a few weeks until money runs out, this is not nice to sort of take decisions, think clearly. So that were some of the important learnings. And in general, the learnings is that a startup is a marathon, not a sprint. And we were tackling it as a sprint, especially me sort of going to Berlin within 2 weeks, more or less, not having an apartment, crashing with one founder for 1 month, with the second founder for another month, which was great because we got to know each other on a way better level. But yeah, I mean, it's tough, and there was no real place to relax and to have new input, to have this work-life balance as well. And we were already doing overnighters in the first week. You know, we're super motivated, which was fantastic, but somehow, a little bit unexperienced at that time.
So you were sprinting instead of going for the long run, and therefore you then also quit Yeppt and said, hey, let's start another application. Let's start Flatastic.
It's not that easy at that time. So we didn't quit so quickly. So we kept going. We changed Yeppt like 3 times. Yeppt was all about, at the beginning, about getting people together, how to make these group chats as efficient as possible, then that you can meet up. And then, this wasn't working out so well that we thought about, how can we get people connected when they're already meeting up? And we had this concept of a decentralized social network, more or less, very abstract. And I mean, my co-founders were both theoretical physicists. Me, with my background, I was also like very much able to think on this abstract level. The feedback we received from business was, great idea. Let's build this photo wall. So at the end, it's an application where you scan a QR code, then you're connected with all the people around, and you can share photos on a photo wall. And we did some nice events with people that we got to know through the Axel Springer Plug and Play network. They were supporting us super, and we had the business model figured out as well, in a sense, we needed to sell to these event management companies so they can sell our service to the event organizers, and had the first talks, had the pricing ready. But at one point we sat down and we thought, hey, why did we start Yeppt? We started Yeppt to sort of create this viral messaging platform, a platform where people sort of interact with each other. And now we're sort of building a sales team to go sell technology to event management companies. And this just wasn't what we started and what our ambitions were. So we sat down with our investors from Axel Springer Plug and Play, told them that this is sort of not the direction we want to continue, and received great feedback from our partners at that time. They understood, and they were not angry at or anything. obviously they were a bit sad. So were we. I mean, it wasn't a simple decision. Since we kept going so much, we were in personal debt. Like I remember that a few times in Berlin, I didn't know how to pay my rent, and I had to go to my parents to sort of get some money, and that was super tough. As I said before, like my parents sort of saying, "Hey, finish your degree, get a nice job, and earn some nice bucks," and me coming back and saying, "Okay, I did this startup thing and I need now your money." And then again, even though they didn't understand what I'm doing, why I'm doing that, they were just supporting me, which was fantastic. And sort of to get back on track, we stayed in the same team. We really liked working together, and we founded an agency, sort of selling our abilities to build prototypes or even whole technical infrastructures, with the intention to still test new product ideas and then eventually spin them off.
Makes sense. I just have one follow-up question, because you just described that you were basically building something that didn't really feel good for you. Was that like you had a mission in your head that you discussed as a team, and then you apparently took a detour or took a different path than actually following your mission? Would you agree that this is basically what happened, or how it felt like? That you got away from your core mission that you defined at the beginning?
Yes, a little bit. It was basically the way, a possibility to make that venture work economically. Yeah. But we understood if we do this, it's going to destroy what we set out for, right? We will be building a company that we don't want to run. And then it's just better to stop. And it's better to stop earlier than when you're like in the middle and you have clients and investors and a team that sort of relies on you pushing forward this mission. Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense to reach that conclusion, because if you then compete with someone else who has the same idea but is actually fully convinced, they will just outbeat you because they are more motivated and they can really see where they want to go. And that's a wise decision to not go into that battle. Did you already have investors with like Plug and Play, Axel Springer? Were they invested in Yeppt, or how did that work? I was a classic accelerator deal. So we received, I think, 25,000 euros exactly, and gave them 5% for their investment, as well as for the program that we participated in, which was running like for 3 months, and they helped us with mentors and networking.
Got it. So it wasn't like a big like investment round that you did there, but you still had some money, some external money in there. How do you approach the discussion, the talk to them, where you then actually informed them about that you want to quit and stop?
I'll just be open and straightforward in your reasoning. I mean, they knew that we had to take a few detours, and they knew that we were struggling, obviously. Right. We're in contact on a regular basis. So I think for them, it wasn't a huge surprise that we took this decision.
And it's also part of the game. So they know that most of the startups that go through their program probably won't succeed at the end. So then you had your agency with the same core team, basically. Were you still living in the shared apartment?
Yes.
And was it that chaotic that you then came up with the idea of launching Flatastic as basically an app to manage your household?
Hey, it wasn't that chaotic, but like at the end, I mean, I was living in shared flats for such a long time, and it was always the same discussions. So were my co-founders, and yeah, we were just building this actually pure joy and because we were fascinated about building mobile apps at that time and providing a solution for this problem. And that was the intention. So we built Flatastic. We showed it to our shared flats. They started using it, and then they told their friends, and then more people started using it. And at some point we were like 1,000 people using it, and then some newspapers wrote about it, and then you have suddenly 10,000 people using it and more. And yeah, that was quite nice in a sense of that it was just intrinsically what we just wanted to solve, what we wanted to do, with no intentions whatsoever to build a big business out of it. But rather just problem solution, super simple.
I love that because of two aspects. First of all, you're now very much aligned with the mission. You wanted to solve a problem that you had good motivation to solve. And at the same time, you also solved your own problem. I think that's a very good combination to start a business from.
Yeah, one of my early mentors told me, always eat your own dog food. And I'm still doing that. If I start a new venture or start a new project, just try to experience it and understand if I can use it myself, if it will create value for me, which I like a lot, to be honest.
Makes sense. So you just told us about the growth of Flatastic from 1,000 to 10,000 users and beyond that. At a certain point, you probably also thought about getting investors on board or not. How did you approach that topic with Flatastic?
So it was rather an agency strategic decision that we said, okay, we want to test different business ideas or different products, and then at some point pick one and focus. Or even like this pick one and focus was naturally, we understood that we are good in agency work because we can deliver. Our customers were happy at that time, but we didn't want to scale our structure. We just intrinsically knew, okay, it's not an agency business that we want to make big. It's still like this, okay, this small product team that finds a problem, solves that really nicely, and has something scalable within this solution or within this business model. And we ran different tests. I don't know if you remember at that time, this app Yo was quite popular, where you had only the possibility to send a Yo. It was super funny. Like in our friend circle, everybody was using it, and we were thinking, okay, hey, nice. It was again this messaging problem. And we're figuring out if there would be a possibility to have a messenger with only emoticons. And then we did a prototype. And in 1 month, when we tested that, I received so many good nights from my peers and friends, because that's the only thing that you can do with 2 emoticons, right? So that was one direction. The other direction is like we looked at restaurants, and we thought, hey, it would be nice if they're not booked out. You could have a last-minute table reservation. So we did a pitch deck and started directly to sort of sell the solution to restaurants. And after 3 restaurants, we knew, okay, there was so many people from these deal platforms, that already went over there, and they had bad experience, and there was just no motivation at all for such a platform to be adopted. And we run several of these tests while building customer projects. And at some point we said, okay, it's time to decide and pick one. And at that point we reached 50,000 users with Flatastic. We thought, okay, hey, obviously, like, this is the one thing that problem solution fits. So we could pick that one.
Nice. And you always had this agency set up. So you were testing ideas, and basically the agency was there to probably pay for rent and buy your time to actually test business ideas. Is that a setup that you would recommend, or is it also a big distraction and energy dragger basically to a certain degree, because you always need to do things in parallel and cannot really focus on just one thing?
It's so difficult. So validating business ideas before running makes a lot of sense. If it's an agency or if it's your day job and you validate on the side, I would recommend that to everybody. Like, do a little validation before really starting. Then I believe that at some point you need to take the decision, because building an agency and building a service company that sort of fulfills the needs of your customers versus building a product company, that's just 2 different things. And one will distract the other. that, yeah, at some point you will need to take the decision which path you want to go.
Right. And you did so with Fantastic, but still the question remains, why didn't you get any investor on board, or what were the thoughts behind that? Because you're still a bootstrap business to these days.
Yeah. So with these numbers, and we had some nice pitch decks ready, we gave ourselves 3 months, which is just not enough time. Can happen in 3 months. If it happens, then one is lucky. As well as, let's say, we did a few mistakes that I, now looking back, wouldn't do the same way, in a sense of, okay, we had people really interested, and maybe the issue was a little bit that we tried to make it by the book, and what means by the book? I mean, we read all the blogs from Silicon Valley, and we were trying to follow this mentality. The issue with that is, one, Europe works differently than Silicon Valley. You need a business model in most cases. Two, fundraising is not this like, okay, this thing where you have like an exact plan and you do it like that. But yeah, if there's the opportunity, it can make sense to get liquidity in, get an investor on board, and then make the next sort of step there. Right. So in a nutshell, not too much, not enough time and mistakes. And after this 3 months, we were actually invited to Silicon Valley with this program, Black Box VC, that was sponsored by Google for Entrepreneurs. And they were trying to convince us to sort of move our business and ourselves to Silicon Valley. That's like the goal of the program. They introduce you to investors, to the ecosystem, show you how things work. And we had nice talks, and people in Silicon Valley were quite impressed by the numbers that we already had, right? Still at that time, we were already broke again. And so we sat together, the three of us, and after like all these struggles, we looked each other into the eyes and we said, okay, that's it. Everybody should just for a while go his own path, and let's see what happens. And looking back, I was tough, but I'm super grateful that it played out exactly that way, because as you said, Fantastic is still bootstrapped. And one of our early supporters always said, look, Malik, that's your camper van. It's not a rocket ship. It's your camper van. You need to treat it like that. So your camper van, it goes 80 miles an hour on the highway. It's not super fancy. It's not going to go to the moon, but it will drive you down to the beach and you'll have a great time. And you need to sort of work on it a little bit and fix it here and there. And it's going to be reliable and nice. And I think it also took us some time to understand Fantastic as a bootstrapped business, and not this huge opportunity where you need to exponentially grow your user base in order to monetize them later on. And, all that stories that you read back in the time. I don't know if these are still the stories in the startup space. I hope not.
I love that analogy because, back then in 2015, 2016, it was basically, as you just described, get VC money, grow as fast and quickly as possible. Don't worry about profitability. You can solve that later. And then it's super hard as an entrepreneur to actually say, no, I'm not going down that path. I do something differently. I want to have no investors at all. I want to focus on my own ship, my camper bus. I think that's a wonderful analogy to also see, hey, entrepreneurship doesn't necessarily mean or equal entrepreneurship. There are different versions that you can choose from. And you mentioned also the different paths that you then said, hey, let's focus on our own paths individually. And you actually did that. And in 2016, you joined the ranks at Modem, a company which offers data integrity for supply chain operations. And I'm just wondering, what was so interesting for you at Modem? What did you decide to, okay, it's time to join that company now?
So, yeah, exactly. After taking the decision, everybody goes his own path. I stayed a little bit longer in Berlin and was looking at job opportunities there. But I understood that I went to Berlin to get a startup off the ground, and this didn't work. And I was having this long distance relationship. So I thought, okay, that's it. I'm moving back. So I came back to Zurich. Obviously, as you heard, it wasn't a big economic success. I mean, there was a lot of personal growth, but from an economic perspective, I just had to find a new job. So I took a lot of interviews, I met a lot of people, and I met Mark Degen, my co-founder at Modum, and he told me about different ideas that he had. And one was okay, hey, we combine blockchain with IoT and bring that into the pharmaceutical sector. I was like, that sounds interesting, and started to dig a little bit deeper. And going back, I told you about this decentralized social network that we tried with Momenta.io. So that's like the first time that I encountered and went a little bit looking into these decentralized technologies. Unfortunately, we took a little detour there, ended up somewhere else. And that was like the second time. And in these 2 years, the space matured so much. So there was Ethereum, a Turing-complete smart contract platform where you could now actually write programmable code onto a blockchain infrastructure. So I was so fascinated about the possibilities of this new technology, about the movement in this space, as well as the application that we choose, because most of the applications were sort of in the financial sector. Obviously, with Bitcoin being a replacement for money, makes a lot of sense. Bringing that into supply chain, where you have a lot of transactions as well, where you have people that do not know each other along the value chain, that was a nice angle to this, or for this new technology, and adding this IoT component on it. Obviously, if you want to track transaction in a space where physical goods are moved, you need to be able to track them appropriately. So yeah, there was a huge fascination for this problem, as well as for the technology around at that time.
Before we continue with the show, we would like to introduce you to our new partner, Nuco. Nuco helps founders navigate the paperwork that starting a company involves. From the first consultation all the way to the commercial register, Nuco has helped more than 900 entrepreneurs start their company, and they do so at highly competitive prices. To find out more, visit nuco.ch/Swisspreneur. Again, that's nuco.ch/Swisspreneur. And now, on with the show.
Awesome. And you were actually also the CEO of the company. But then in 2017, you actually switched your role from CEO to advisor. And that was also around the same time as Modum just raised over 13 million in a token sale. So how did he actually come to that conclusion, to then probably at one of the best moments in company history, no, it's time for me to step down as CEO and just be an advisor to the company?
Modum was a hell of a ride. That was just pure craziness, more or less. So, I mean, I joined the project super early on. There's no company found, nothing. We had people at University of Zurich building a prototype, and that's it. And yeah, I mean, Mark's super cool. He was like, okay, it was working, joining these meetings and actually running this meeting. And after a week, he was like, you want to do CEO? I was like, yeah, why not? So within 3 months, we built a prototype. We applied to the accelerators, and we received a yes from all the accelerators around Zurich. That was fantastic. So at the end, we could choose. We chose Kickstart Accelerator. We won our vertical at Kickstart Accelerator. We had first pilots. At that time, still with pharmaceutical companies, sort of delivering pallets to wholesalers. And along the way, we understood, hey, our solution needs to be rather placed in the second part where we have a higher volume. So the wholesaler sort of sends 500,000 parcels a day to all pharmacies and doctors and hospitals. Because basically, if you go to a pharmacy, you buy an aspirin, it's already reordered. And there's this whole infrastructure behind that. And with our solution, we were able to solve a regulatory issue that the wholesaler had at that time. But we needed to understand how to place our solution and with whom to work. So like the first pilot was, okay, hey, the volumes are not big enough. The second pilot was sort of, hey, we're working with the wrong entities because the pharmacies, at the time we sent our app and our sensors that were like development kits more or less to the pharmacies and to the doctors, which sort of always sort of change who is in charge of getting the goods in. And yeah, our second pilot had maybe 25 companies, and our support was already overwhelmed. Yeah, our app was buggy, but we understood this is not scalable because there's just no way to do that. And then we focused more on the logistics people, because these go and pick up the goods and they go and deliver the goods. And this is like the second thing we found out. We did a Series A, a seed round, and we were preparing the second seed round at that time, where, let's say, we had certain delays from our corporate partners, which triggered that our already aligned investors sort of said, okay, if the corporate partner can wait with a commitment, we can wait with a commitment. And we were like, but we can't because our money is running out. And at that time, there was this crazy ICO bubble. I'm sure you remember, where people were raising hundreds of millions within seconds, more or less. And we were looking at that very early on. At the beginning already, we thought about ICOs. We thought always, okay, hey, as a company being active in this very old school industry, logistics or and pharmaceutical logistics, supply chain. I mean, okay, we thought, okay, let's do it the ordinary way, more or less. That was our intention. We were a little bit forced into going down the path of the ICO, which also was just, crazy times. I mean, I haven't experienced something like that ever. And basically the role change, that was sort of clear very early on already. When setting up the company, it was clear with my co-founders that I will sort of do the first steps and then hand it over at some point. That was good for them. That was good for me. And with the ICO, the company was in a stage where it was nicely financed. We had certain relationships with customers in place. We had started our own development or engineering of our own sensing device, because you need that if you want to be active in the pharmaceutical supply chain. So it was in a pretty nice space. And also what happened is that, raising this $13.5 million just made the company a complete different one. So it was just, we needed to start from scratch. And Simon Dösecker, who took over, we were in contact with him already like months before. And he knew the team, he knew the challenge, and he had the perfect background. So his background was robotics. He built sensing devices for GoPro at the end. So he did first a startup, exited that at GoPro, and had a whole team here in Zurich that was working in this niche. And it was clear that he will be sort of taking over. And with that, we had a nice sort of change where I could step back, which was difficult at the time. But I also understood, in order to give room for somebody new to create his vision, more or less, because I believe this is like the job of a founding CEO, is to sort of give the vision and steer the ship, more or less. And it's not nice to steer the ship if like the old one is always saying, hey, but before we did it that way, So it was nice to sort of have this role change, to let Simon take his place and steer that ship.
Makes sense. You said that you already had this discussion at the beginning that you will eventually leave or change your role. did you have any KPIs or like hard goals defined when that would be the case, or how did you actually have the conversation about that topic?
No hard KPIs. We just agreed that basically, okay, my role will be the first steps, and then there will be somebody else coming in. And we had very early on, with Stefan Weber, a very experienced COO who has a postdoc, who joined the team, who helped me as well, really on the hardware side of things. I mean, as I said, Modum was a super wild ride. I remember that Thomas Bocek, who sits on the board, said at one point, Modum feels like driving in these Durchvos. I don't know if you know these, in these Durchvos, and with like 200 on a highway, more or less. So this is basically what we did, just full gas, more or less.
Right, and you never know, is the car going to break, or are we going to make it? I also wonder in that regard the setup that you chose, because you were there from the very early days, but you knew you would eventually transition out of the operational role. How do you actually incentivize yourself for that? Because then you lay the groundwork, so you probably do want to have some shares of the company, but you also know that you're not going to be there for a super long time. So you probably also want to have some cash coming in. So how did you balance that at Modum?
Yeah, that's a difficult discussion. I think what was way more relevant at the end, if you want to sort of have this impact as a startup team, you need to be completely dedicated, and that is not only like with your brains and your time, but with your emotion. You're just completely there, and this is basically what I did. I put everything that I had into this company. What is way more difficult is to sort of, and I didn't understand that back then, to sort of step down and leave something of yourself kind of behind. That is, was an interesting experience, I have to say.
Also very challenging, because you leave at the very successful point. And did you never think that, hey, I could also continue for a couple more months or 1 or 2 more years?
Definitely. It was just the timing was right at that point. What was also the case is that I was super tired. I mean, you heard my story a little bit. Basically from one failure to the next one, to this crazy ride. So I needed a break. And with that, I was also, I could have this possibility in my life to have some time and reassess where am I? Because as said, from sort of studying a completely different field and ending up at Modum, that was just a crazy ride. So, I was very fortunate to spend some time in Morocco, and we had a super nice time there. I was doing a little bit of remote working, a lot of surfing, and just enjoying time with local people as well. Yeah.
And to really fully recharge the batteries.
Yes, yeah.
Makes sense. Have you ever regretted stepping down as CEO when looking back?
I mean, regret is a strong word. Obviously, sometimes you're thinking, hey, it was super nice. And you think about what would have been if I would have continued, what would have been. But honestly, I think regretting things is not that helpful, because I'm pretty happy in the situation that I am currently. So even though I did a lot of stupid things, and I think I'm still doing quite a lot of stupid things, I don't regret anything. And I would do everything again the same way, because I needed this experience.
Right. And then after recharging your batteries, it was also time to join a new project. You did so in 2018, where you joined Dezentrum, basically the think tank that we mentioned in the beginning. Where do you actually first hear about Dezentrum?
So that was just shortly after I left, after I stepped down at Modum. There was this idea coming my way that people wanted to create a same day weed delivery shop, more or less. So order your weed and get it the same evening, more or less, or within half an hour. And my initial reaction to that was, I'm not going to do that, because with all my projects and ventures, I want to be able to tell my mom, and this she wouldn't approve. So That was the first thing. The second thing is that when I was in Morocco, I was at the beginning, at least, quite active. So it popped up, this one page popped up, asking me for feedback. And at that time, I also joined the Slack of the association, which was, I think, early 2018. With that, I understood, okay, wait, Malik, now you sort of went to Morocco to reflect a little bit what happened. In the first sort of part of your time there, I had some mandates that I was doing remotely, which were super fun, and they were about to sort of fade out. And at that time, I was grabbing the next thing, and I was like, stop, you can't do this. Now you just need to take time and do nothing for a while, and see what happens.
But this can be so much harder than you would imagine, right?
Yeah.
What helped you to actually successfully then do nothing or just focus on yourself? Because if you have your email open or your smartphone even in reach, I can imagine that you get very easily distracted or carried away by the potential of new projects.
I would say people. We had such a lovely neighborhood in Essaouira. So we were living in the middle of the old city, and the downstairs family would invite us. And my girlfriend started a project with the mom there, sort of helping her to gain a salary by bringing tourists to the local hammam. So she was really involved, and I supported her in this. And I had just nice people around. And that was, I would say that was definitely helping a lot to sort of, say, now I want to focus my energy in the here and now, and not in my laptop and possible projects of the future.
Makes sense. So the reality was far too good to pass on.
Yeah.
So then you had that one pager where they were asking for feedback. What happened afterwards? How did you then get more and more involved at Dezentrum?
So we stayed in contact, and then basically all of the people involved in Dezentrum. I helped a little bit along the way. I couldn't completely just do nothing with some introductions or some things that I thought, okay, just talk with each other. And then when I came back, I thought, okay, hey, I want to arrive first. I want to take some time and understand what happened in this time where I was just sort of being and reflecting. And I had different discussions with, super interesting projects. And these projects, most of them had huge ambitions. And I maybe felt as well after what after this super lucky coincidences and super nice timing at Modum, that maybe I needed to top that, but my stomach in all this discussion was just screaming, don't do this. And I was just hanging around with the Dezentrum people more and more, and getting just sucked in more and more. And there was like this one day where I came to the office and said, okay, hey, if we do it, let's do it right. And Dezentrum started as an association, and is still like the main entity is an association of it. Has some reason behind that there's no personal ownership in a association. We didn't want this to go in the way of the mission that we wanted to follow. I said, okay, let's do it, and do it right, in a sense of, let's try to focus all our energy into this project and get it going. Because at the time, the ambitions were also big at Dezentrum. Well, it was a super struggle to find the time to dedicate into these causes that we were sort of kicking off. starting discussions about the impact of this digital transformation, not only from a startup or technology perspective, but for us as humans, as society, which is super important. That's like the second part that convinced me, and probably was also my stomach sort of saying, okay, that's the right thing that I want to do. Because, I was always driven by creating value, and that along the way when creating the startup, you have to prioritize at some point. At some point, you need also to make sure that your investors are happy, and that you generate profit. And this time was the other way around. Like, it was clear that the impact is coming first, and that there was nothing that we could do within, or that we can do within Dezentrum to change this order.
Got it. You also say that you're an actual do tank instead of just a think tank. So what does that actually mean, that difference?
Yeah, maybe quickly elaborate on how we came to the conclusion that we act as a think tank. We knew that we were not a classical startup, and we weren't an agency. And we saw, okay, the most similar thing to what we were doing was think tanks. And we looked at the think tanks that are around, and they give impulse, more or less. They write pieces of papers to explain a trend, to explain something that is happening, and give their advice or their conclusion, and help people along the way, so to say. And and that's me personally, and most of the early Dezentrum members as well, just don't like to write that much. We like to build way more. So we just, again, followed our interest and sort of, kept this as a specialty, because I would say what differentiates us from most of the organizations that are similar to us, or that are in the same field, is that we can actually build prototypes and products in-house, and have all the experience from people that worked at startups, that founded agencies, or founded bars and clubs. So there's a very entrepreneurial spirit with our team, and this is basically what we focused at the beginning, at least, a lot. Now it's a little bit more balanced. There's one or the other piece that we write as well, where I'm super thankful, because this is also a way that you can have a good impact in the world.
And one question that obviously comes up, so you're not the classic startup anymore, but you still have bills to pay. So how are you actually financed?
Yeah, that's a very good question. We should have asked ourselves that before sort of going down that route. We understood that the classical way of a think tank being born is that an entity which has means says, okay, we want to investigate a certain topic, or we want to contribute something to the discourse that is happening. So they create a budget, and then they give that budget to very smart people to act in that. We did it the other way around. We thought, okay, it's super important that people, especially from the tech industry, cover this area, and we want to do this. And that said, that was also sort of the first few months that were super tough. We tried to finance ourselves with projects that would not put us in a niche that we are suddenly an agency, or that we are a startup, or that sort of are against our DNA. But we figured that out pretty quickly. And now what was a super problem at the beginning is our biggest asset, that we are very independently financed. So with different people, we have different relationships and work on different topics. Even within topics, we have different entities that sort of finance us, from the public sector, from the private sector. So we work with companies as well that have an issue that we can solve. We work with academic institutions where we give lectures and provide to research topics that they are looking at. And then we have luckily very good partners that support us, be it foundations or organizations like Engagement Micro, which is just, I'm super grateful that these organizations are around to finance the efforts that we and also other social entrepreneurs do.
Yeah, that's a very important contribution to make such a thing even possible. And you're actually interested in various topics, various very interesting topics. One is remote work and mountain offices, as you used to work yourself from the mountains, basically. Another one is universal basic income, and of course also decentralized organizations. I don't want to rush through all of them, but if I look at the time, I think we do have time to dig into one deeper. And if I had to choose one just out of personal interest, it would be the universal basic income. So why is this even important? Why do you think about universal basic income here in Switzerland, where we have so much money, so to say?
Yeah, that's an interesting topic. So the story goes as follows, that I was convinced already when we had to vote about that, maybe because I'm super optimistic. I believe that a lot of people are convinced that something like universal basic income would help societies in general. And the question is how to get that started. And the other question is as well, and I can't answer that. Nobody can answer that. What are the real effects? What I know is sort of my conviction that a human being is kind. One, a human being wants to be productive, wants to contribute to society. This is like conviction. And the other thing is experience, that lack of money, and that's a problem. Lack of money is just not helping driving good decisions in a sense of good, like healthy for one personally, or even for society. So like that's, I think these three things that make me convinced that universal basic income is something that we need definitely to talk more about and also get experiments running.
Absolutely. We are also big fans of Naval Ravikant, the founder of AngelList. And on the Joe Rogan episode, he actually took a pretty controversial standing and says, universal basic income, that's a non-solution to a non-problem, to put it in his words. And for him, it's much more about an education problem and not about a real money problem. So there are new jobs that emerge with new technologies, but we are not capable of basically educate the people to go from one job that is not in a high demand anymore and make them shift to the new jobs. So what do you think about these statements of Naval, that universal basic income, it sounds all nice in theory, but it's basically a non-solution to a non-problem?
I mean, Naval is very controversial with all of his statements, I would say, and that makes him also special. So where I don't agree is that it's a non-problem, because as said, lack of money is a problem. There is a lot of research actually being done on that if if people are lacking money, that they are taking badder decisions. And from personal experience, I know that if you're lacking money, if I'm in Berlin and I don't know how to pay my rent, I don't have the foresight of thinking, okay, is it smart? Is that a smart decision that I'm taking? Is this also a sustainable decision for me and for my environment? So from this perspective, I would argue that the non-problem is definitely a problem. And the question is, at that point, which problem do you address, right? I mean, that there is a shift happening. I think we can all agree to that. What is happening with our workforce? We don't know that. So I wouldn't argue that most people will lose their job. I think a lot of people need to rethink on how they are sort of contributing to society, that the personal relationship might be more important than it is at the moment. But at the end, I just don't know. And that's the scientist again in me that says, okay, if I don't know, I run experiments. And this is basically also what we do with Ting, which is one of our, let's say, bigger projects. And I would even say it's not only a bigger project, but it's a small startup that was created with our partner organization, the Verein Grundeinkommen, which is sort of way deeper in this basic income topic. They were already part of the initiative in 2016 and stayed and sort of worked on solutions on that. And our contribution sort of to Ting was to bring their big ideas of how it could be feasible that all of us could have a basic income on a national level, to bring that to, okay, what do we do today and tomorrow in order to have the possibility to test this. And we took very consciously the path of not doing that in a political manner, but do it entrepreneurial. So we created Ting with that in mind, that, hey, there needs to be experiments in that field and that there's a shift happening, and our systems to sort of pick people up when they need it most, they haven't changed since Industrial Revolution. So we need to rethink these anyhow. And this is how we can contribute, by just learning. And so far, the journey is going great. I mean, to explain quickly how it works, to be eligible to receive basic income, you need to become a member. And the first thing we did is basically we switched the idea of basic income around, that not everybody gets it, but everybody pays. So this is also something that we need to understand. Basic income will not be something that is for free for our society. We need to be willing to pay something for it. And we need to be willing to pay something for it, even if we are not using it. And yeah, you remember eat your own dog food. Obviously, like I had to do that. And that was, I remember that, I mean, we recommend around 5% of your salary that you pay as a membership fee. That's not nothing. That's a substantial amount, more or less. And it was a big step to do this. But immediately afterwards, it just felt right, because you knew that, hey, I'm now sort of insured for basic income, more or less. And still now I have to laugh, like every time when I go into e-banking, like there's this outgoing transaction, which is like Grundeinkommen, more or less, where I know, okay, like I'm contributing to that. And we have come a long way. So Ting has a nice, platform where you can read about the whole idea, the concept, and we have approval from FINMA that we can run it that way. And, we're approaching 100 members, which is just blowing my mind. There's like 100 members sort of contributing to basic income. We have the second development. This is how we call somebody receiving basic income, starting. So there's actually now evidence happening, or evidence. There's data being created. There's experience being created, and I think this is what the debate and discourse kind of needs, because I'm convinced we will get something like universal basic income sooner or later on a worldwide level, and this is what I'm dedicating to. On a national level, I am convinced that this will make our nation more innovative, where we need to sort of figure out which way we want to go. Is I think George Orwell had in his novel a very dystopian view on basic income, where people are sort of only hanging around at home and depending on these people that are feeding them. So we need to be very careful how to shape this new system of supporting people in their mission of going down the path of intrinsic motivation.
I think there Naval actually made a good point. It's very much about meaning, about doing meaningful work, but also feeling meaningful in a certain way. And I think that's really crucial to also rely on in the whole concept. One question here, though, you can give the people money if they need the money, but what about giving them, instead of money, just access to basic housing, to internet, to smartphone, to get everybody to a minimum standard, as you theoretically would with the income, with the money, but not giving them the actual money. Have you also thought about that?
Yes, definitely. And I mean, the implementation of Ting is a bit further away from this basic income thought. So in order to be eligible, you need to explain why you want to use it. And there's a certain criteria that need to be met. So it needs to be something that is intrinsic. It needs something to be that is not egoistic, so that somebody else also has something from that. And then obviously as well, we need to have enough funds to sort of make that happen, which so far wasn't ever an issue. So, I mean, already with our implementation, we're not at the pure universal basic income. And I mean, I'd like to get to the more purer way, because I believe that, as said, lack of money is an issue, and you can give people this money and then just trust that they will need it or use it for what they need most. They know best what they need, right? So if somebody is super happy in a small apartment but needs new equipment or needs a mobile phone, who am I to tell him, hey, this is not the right thing to do? I mean...
Sure, yeah. Makes sense.
And there again, there's lots of research that with that, the whole expenses that we as a community have to interact with people in need, to control people that are in need, this would be substantially reduced. So most of the effort that go the direction of basic income, they resulted, even though that wasn't the intention at the beginning, but they resulted that the budget that they sort of spent for basic income was compensated 3 or 4 times, because they were just saving money. Because now the beggars that sort of were costing the state of London hundreds of thousands of pounds a year, they needed like 50,000, because that was all they needed. They bought smartphones, and they were super also knowledgeable about how much they can take from this, let's say, shared pot, or from this budget. It's the same experience that we're doing at the moment. So we are actively pushing our members to take the money, because we're also super hesitant with this shared common good that we created for each other.
Makes sense. So very exciting times ahead, I would say. And you've also come a very long way, I would say. You know, we talked about Big Pharma, about startups in the early days, failures, and even now universal basic income. In general, are you optimistic for the future, or what is your perspective where we are heading to as a society?
I mean, I'm in general an optimistic person. I think you can feel that or see that. Sometimes so optimistic that it's bordering to stupidity, you know. But I like this asset of me. And then when I look into the future, I mean, that's basically also what we do at Dezentrum. We try to imagine futures, because there's not one, there's different scenarios. And yeah, this was also one of the drivers to join Dezentrum, in a sense of making sure that we're not ending up in a dystopian future, because it's not, I mean, it's imaginable, and certain developments go into this direction, and it's up to us to make sure that we're not ending up in a world that we personally, our children and their children don't want to live in. So I think that's a huge responsibility that we have as a society, and we need to make sure that we don't take a wrong path there.
Exactly. So maybe to wrap up the conversation, what do you personally, but also with Dezentrum, have planned for the next 12 months? What do you have in store for us?
So as said, or you quickly talked about the 3 topics that I'm personally involved in. So that's my main focus. I would say, universal basic income with Ting, that we are pushing forward. Remote working is rather like the focus. What is digital transformation? What does that mean for rural regions. What does that mean for mountains? How can they profit? And the idea or why that's fascinating is that the difference between people living in different cities. So if I live in Zurich, in Berlin, in New York, or even in Casablanca, the difference is not existing. Like, we wear the same clothes, we listen to the same music, we eat the same food, but drive 2 hours here into the mountains and you'll be in a different world. And you see this difference not only on a cultural level, but on a political level, as well as that most of these resources that are created at the moment in digitalization are focused in cities and urban areas. And we need to be very careful that we don't create sort of an angry mob outside the cities that will hunt us with the pitchforks. So this is basically what we try to do with our collaboration with the Naturpark Beverin, where we have now a first project, Desk im Dorf, kind of creating a co-working space for the whole region, but mainly getting the people living there interested in this digital transformation, get them participating, get them to understand that that's a big chance as well for them, trying to close the gap a little bit, get people from Zurich up there, but not only to just visit, consume, and then go again, but to actually interact and create maybe joint projects and talk and discuss, so that we as a society come closer. So that's like one direction that we're pushing. And then the last one that you quickly mentioned with decentralized organization. I mean, that's one of the core competences that we have.
It's already in the name, right?
Exactly. And it's super fascinating what is happening with blockchain technologies now, again with let's say Bitcoin getting from day to day to new all-time highs. I mean, the first time where the market crashed, it was quiet and was good because a lot of people that were just there to make huge profits, they left the space. And in the meantime, a lot of work has been done. And what is super fascinating from my perspective is that we have now these digital organizations that are capable of managing assets in the millions with smart contracts, on one hand programmatically, on the other hand it's being governed with this worldwide community that makes sure that these organizations work. And I mean, Bitcoin is already something like that. There's no company that is responsible for Bitcoin. There's no management. There's no CEO of Bitcoin. There's no address. There's just a protocol, more or less, and the different actors that need to find solutions. And I think this is something we can learn a lot of in setting up the future companies, the future startups, and with all this potential, obviously there comes huge risk, because at the moment, who is reliable if something goes wrong in a decentralized platform? There's nobody. There's no off switch. And on the other perspective as well is that from a society perspective, we have these big multinational companies that are making millions or billions even, and they pay not $1 in taxes because they're so tax optimized. Okay, that happens after like being 15 or 20 years in business and growing so fast. With this decentralized organization, we're building these companies from day one, more or less. They don't exist in a jurisdiction, right? And they're not contributing anything to the whole infrastructure that we as a society are providing to that. So I think that's a lot of big open questions, huge opportunities and possibilities, and some things that we really need to consider and think as a society how we want to handle that without sort of stopping this innovation that is happening.
So people who will follow you, they will embark on a fascinating and interesting journey, I can tell. So we have two last parts for this interview. The first one, I already saw you brought some books into the studio. So we want to know about your personal gadgets and resources that you can recommend to our readers. What did you bring to us?
So I brought to you two books that I'm reading at the moment. One is Utopien für Realisten from Rutger Bregman, which I can really recommend. And what is super happy or what's super interesting for me is that as said, like, I was just convinced that basic income makes sense. Rudolf Bregman explains me why it has already made sense in the 70s and before that. So that's super interesting to go into this. And, I brought The Entrepreneurial State from Mariana Mazzucato, which, sort of argues that the role of the state is way more important than it is shown in the public discussion at the moment. And she doesn't argue only, she brings evidence that it was crucial that the state of California, for instance, invested so much in innovation to make the Silicon Valley ecosystem emerge. And so far, as I understood it, it's okay. It's always these famous venture capitalists or these famous entrepreneurs. This is a fresh perspective on the state, the role of the state, which I think as Switzerland, again, these two topics are super important. How can we stay innovative? What should we do as a nation, as a society to keep bringing this innovation to our people? I mean, that's the current books that I read, and then recommendations. I mean, I've read, or the one, the mom test I already, recommended that. And then it's, hey, what interests you? I mean, I read different things.
I think that's the right recommendation. Go for what feels right to you personally. So now for the very last part, we have some rapid fire questions for you. I either give you a selection or a short question where you can answer in 1 to 2 sentences. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So the first one, what are you most proud of in your life?
Hey, I would say I'm most proud of my parents. And because, I mean, it's difficult to be their son, and I think my brothers will agree, because my dad sort of was born in Eaudain, which is sort of like the hills in Morocco, with, I don't know, 10 people, no electricity, today still no water, and sort of made it to Switzerland. My mom is from the same region, and they raised us and became part of the Swiss society, contributing to the society, and not losing their roots. So I would say, like, they make me most proud, with all their errors and faults they have, you know. Beautiful.
Lake or mountains?
Oh, difficult one. If you've had said ocean, I would have said ocean immediately. Lake or mountains? Yeah, I would pick mountains.
Fair point. What advice would you give to your 20-year-old self?
So when I was 20, I started studying. Difficult. Do what you did.
That's also, like, don't take life too seriously. Don't think about that advice. It will come later. Do you have any favorite mistake? We talked about a couple where you said this was a learning, but is there anything that you would call your favorite mistake?
Oh, difficult. I think something that my girlfriend will laugh about is that she gifted me a guitar on my birthday and guitar lessons. And that's probably the very first time that I learned something new with experts. And I actually told her, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I would say one of my biggest mistakes is, instead of trying to figure out everything by myself and trying to teach myself all the things, it would have made sense to talk to people that already know how to do these things and sort of, really work with these experts.
Makes sense. And the last one for you today. Here, I'm really curious, Zurich or Berlin?
Oh, definitely Zurich, because I'm here.
So for now, but that might change in the future.
Oh, I'm not so sure. Like, I mean, what is nice, if you live somewhere, you have friends and people there, and this will always result of you coming back or they coming to visit. But yeah, I'm old now. No, kidding. But this back and forth, it's okay. Do that in the 20s, but now it's okay.
So it's probably a thing of the past.
Yeah, probably.
Nice. Malik, thank you so much for all the insights, the stories that you shared with us today. It was really a lot of fun and a pleasure to have you as a guest. And all the best and lots of success for whatever you will tackle in the future.
Silvan, thank you very much for having me, and it was a big pleasure to talk with you.
We hope you enjoyed today's show. This episode was produced in cooperation with the ETH Entrepreneur Club, a student organization which aims to inspire, educate, and empower the next generation of entrepreneurs. The ETH Entrepreneur Club holds more than 40 events every year, resulting in an impressive alumni list of successful startups. If you want to keep up with their busy agenda, make sure to give them a follow on social media.